Okay.
So just face the flag and then say open meetings.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can't. I didn't.
Good evening. Welcome to the January 2nd, 2020 Litchfield Board of Selectmen Special Meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item of business this evening is the review of the 2020 tax cap calculations. Mr. Brown.
Okay, so Selectman Leary, myself, Karen White, we attended the Budget Committee meeting prior to the Christmas break and went through the operating budget. Kind of just gave a brief introduction of the warrant articles. At the close of that meeting, the Budget Committee took a look at, asked a question about how we're doing with the tax cap. And at that point in time, realized that we are way over the tax cap. As of right now, you'll see that we're $159,853 over the tax cap. The primary driver there is the communication system, which, you know, we've been trying to discuss different ways of financing it. It's a big ticket item this year. So the Budget Committee basically was pretty forward in saying, well, is the Selectmen going to come up with a solution? Or they're going to expect the Budget Committee to try to figure this out. And we agreed we'd bring it back to the board for discussion. I've looked at different things, contacted the financing company that we use to lease purchase the communication equipment, looked at lease purchasing the plow truck instead of actually purchasing it. I know that the Board of Selectmen's goal here was really, we didn't want to create more long-term debt. That's always been the goal because we've just taken on the fire station bond and we know we've got capital projects coming down the road. So the big cost, the communication system at $147,474, that would be a 5-year lease payment. What I'm recommending this evening for the board to consider is that we reword the warrant article so that we still do a lease purchase, but we defer the payment until 2021. That's when your first payment would be made. So in essence,
We're paying in arrears.
In essence, what we're doing, we're paying in arrears. Instead of a 5-year lease purchase, you're really stretching that out over a 6-year period. You'll be making five payments, but over 6 years of interest is what you'd be doing. So if we did that, that would eliminate that cost. Article 4 would go to zero. There'd be no tax impact for 2020. And I know we're all aware that the tax impact would occur in 2021. We would take on that annual payment. That still puts us over the tax cap by $12,379.
Now, that was the same strategy we had used on the fire station bond also, right?
Right.
You bump it down the road.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then I'll just jump to Article 8, which is the Dara Pond treatment, $35,000. I had, in that number, reviewing the cost estimates, I had done an estimate of what it would cost for year 1, year 2, and year 3. There's going to be an annual cost, I believe, for this project if we want to maintain the quality of water at Dara Pond. I don't really know what it's going to be in year 4, 5. I'm not really sure in year 3. But based on the information I received, I put the number together of $35,000. That left me a $5,000 contingency. I really don't think it's going to be necessary to carry that contingency. I think we're okay with raising $30,000. That should get us through 3 years. We may even do better. And the third year, things may be looking great. And it may be just a minimum effort of just doing a lake survey, testing the water quality and doing a quick survey of the weeds.
Okay.
So if we brought that down to $30,000, we are now over the tax cap. Where'd that go? $7,379. So the only other place that I could look at, library earned time, $5,000. They need to have those funds in that expendable trust fund. I don't want to touch the general assistance, the $10,000 to establish that trust fund. And I'm not comfortable recommending to the board that we use any more money from the unassigned fund balance this year. We're recommending a total amount of $200,000. So I look at this as your own personal finances, and we're trying to accomplish everything here. We're trying to accomplish our priorities. And I look at the next item, the human health services, as an item that we could reduce our cost.
Bring
And
that
I would-
down to what,
I would
15?
recommend that we raise and appropriate $15,000.
You're dropping 10 out of that one?
Yeah, and that would bring you under the tax cap at $2,621. Now,
Mr.
with
Chair,
that being said, this evening I'll be having a discussion with the budget committee. The chairman is already aware. The library will be looking to increase their budget, I think, by $1,200, $1,300. So that's going to make that number actually.
A little bit more, but it still keeps us under the
It will
budget.
still be under the tax cap.
Now, I mean, even with reducing the health and human services, I think when the committee met this year, they came up with about $15,000 of organizations,
We
what
did,
people are asking
yeah.
and so forth. And, I look at it and say, look at Article 7, we're giving general assistance, which is pretty much welfare. So we're still raising $25,000 worth of,
Right.
my question
Charity
towards that,
for-
what was the expenditures the last few years?
Well, that's a good question. I was doing a little bit of research this morning, and see if I can find it. Health. So Health and Human Services.
There?
I'll have to get it. What did I call it? Health trust, health insurance, health agencies. See, I'll find it. So going back, looking at what we've done, some historical data here in 2015, we had a warrant article where we raised $11,250. In 2016, you raised $15,167. And then in 17, there was a discussion with the Board of Selectmen. There was, I don't know if it's a tight budget year or what, but the appropriation that year was $2,400. And then in 2018, the board actually didn't have a special warrant article, and they budgeted $2,320 in the operating budget. In 19, we came forward and asked for appropriation of $25,000. So you can see if this year we go with the 15,000, and remember, we encumbered
25,000.
out of the 25,000, you have a recommendation of spending 15 of it, and we encumbered the balance.
So the expenditure was less. Well, what was the cost for those two divisions last year?
In 2009, you mean
How much it
19
cost
or
us in the
18?
budget? Yep.
So in 2019,
You
this
spent
is
what?
just a round number, right? About $15,000 is the cost that we came forward with a recommendation. The board we encumbered the funds. The board has not taken an official vote on that, but that was the committee's recommendation, 15,000.
I'm just asking, what did we actually spend last year?
Thus far in 2019, we have not spent anything.
I've not
We're
spent.
encumbering the funds and we're giving them,
This is
So
not,
that what you did
this is
not-
not general assistance. It's the stipends that we give the different agencies.
And you didn't give it to them?
Not yet. We
Last year
we
you
encumbered
gave-
the funds.
Last year, you didn't give it to them?
Well, this current year, 2000, well, yeah, all right, sorry.
2019.
2019, funding has not been paid yet.
You had not given them what they,
Correct. We had a motion on that during our last meeting that we were going to encumber them this year because
I remember that, but
The
in terms of
committee-
expenditure.
the committee get to the point, they came up with X amount of dollars, and we had some monies left over, and we were going to investigate, can we help out through the Litchfield's Women's Club and so forth and other agencies. So thus far, no money has been distributed from the 2019 fund.
But the funds have been preserved. The 25,000 is preserved. And they were
Yes.
come,
Personally, I think the Budget Committee, in good faith, is making an exceptional attempt at working with us to accommodate this. They appear, if I'm not mistaken, to be able to support the warrant articles, but are looking for a way to meet the tax cap.
I think, and I think in our introduction of the warrant articles to the Budget Committee, they've not officially taken any action.
Right.
It appeared they understood them, and it seemed like there was support, but there was no formal vote.
Mr. Chairman, in that vein, I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the town administrator to rework our warrant articles to come in line with the Budget Committee's recommendation to come within the tax cap.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lemire,
Second.
second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm opposing because I don't understand what happened right now. I'm a little confused. And the reason why is that I don't understand. We appropriated something last year to be used. We did not do it. And we reappropriated it again this year. And it's just there for, the purpose of that was for agencies as well. That funding.
So there's two different pots of money. We have our general assistance,
I understand that one.
and that funding is not being discussed this evening.
I understand that.
And
That would be if
we have
I
made
needed-
some direct grants to residents that needed assistance.
Okay, so we appropriated money that we may grant, but we didn't.
We had a special warrant article, the citizens approved,
I know.
$25,000 to give to health agencies, human service agencies
All I
that
want you to
provide
do.
services to this town. We, at the end of the year, had not yet approved the funding to those agencies, so the board voted to encumber those funds. Those 2019 funds will still be dispersed.
Okay.
But that vote will occur in January by the board. And now we're talking about 2020, how much money we can afford to raise and meet the tax cap. So we're talking an adjustment of 25,000 down to 15,000.
We can still spend that money on what we deem as necessary, Kevin. It's
Yeah,
just-
I understand.
It hasn't been done yet.
I just,
Like we talked about the women's club a couple weeks ago.
correct.
Because they've got a committee now, Kev. Instead of, before we did not have the committee to disperse that.
Okay.
So we can still.
I'm going to rescind my vote and vote yes.
Okay.
All right, those opposed, those abstained, motion carries 5-0-0. Next is discussing amending the 2020 warrant articles to meet the tax cap.
And I'll just go here and show you, but I think the motion that we just had.
I think we did that.
Did that.
Did that.
That was my intent.
So I will just show you, let's see here, here's Article 4, the Public Safety Communication System. You can see now how the first year be no payments in 2020, causes 6 years of, pushes this out over 6 years. So the total amount that you'll be raising now or paying over the 6-year period, $757,000. Opposed to the 737 if we had been able to make the payment in 2020. So a little bit more in interest, but we're able to come under the tax cap.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Milk.
I just think it's important, they made the effort to, the Budget Committee made the effort to work with us, and I think it's important that we reciprocate.
Yeah.
That was the reason for my motion.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
So you don't need another motion?
I don't need another motion. I think what you just motion, we'll update these warrant articles and be presenting them tonight to the Budget Committee. after the school, after they meet with the school department.
Now, as a board, do we want to vote on the petition warrant article? Article 14.
I don't believe we should. It's a
Which is-
petition. It's not about.
It
what
is
the
on,
reason
it
for
is the tax exempts
cap-
for elderly.
exemption.
Oh,
Did we vote on the petition warrant articles last year?
I believe we did. We talked on one for the town
Yes.
administrator, the road agent.
Right.
So we
So
have
made a
set
recommendation,
precedent.
not
Yes,
recommendation.
correct.
Okay. So we should stay with that then, so we don't confuse people and probably do a
Mm-hmm.
vote.
Is there a tax impact?
so there's no way to calculate a tax impact for that petition article
It will be.
because the question is not raising and appropriating.
Right.
So I think that's why it's optional for the board to make a recommendation or not. I did do some calculations today just to kind of show you what we're talking about here. So the petition proposes to change, there's a couple different things we look at, the gross income in the household. So if you're a single person currently today, you can't have an income of any more than $30,000. If you're married, no more than $45,000. The petition proposes to change the single from 30 to 45, married from 45 to 55. Total assets. To qualify for the program, if you qualify, you come in underneath those income guidelines. You can't have an asset, any assets that exceed $300,000. Your total combined assets cannot exceed $300,000, excluding your home. That's not part of the asset
Excluding,
calculation.
okay.
Excluding the house that you live in here in Litchfield.
You're gonna kick them on the streets, not a good idea.
And if you meet the asset and there's some residency requirements, the years you need to be a resident here in town. But if you meet those criterias, you can see that different age groups are eligible for exemptions. So the age group 65 to 74 would change from 50 to 85,000, from 75 to 79, 80 to 140, and 80 plus years old, 125 to 190,000. So knowing exactly the people that are eligible in 2019, we were able to calculate based on people who are eligible today. Essentially, what you're looking at here is losing about $2,145, $2,145,000 of assessed value, which
Off the tax
off the
base.
tax base, which equals about $51,000 in tax revenue. Now, with all that being said, the increase here of an income, we're talking about a $15,000 increase. I don't know if that's really going to open the door up for, a lot more people, and 10,000 for the married. So, I think this will help keep up with inflation in our town. And you have to understand, we're also going to be doing an update in 2020.
Yes.
So all the people that currently qualify for the exemption could see the value of their properties increase next year. And then they'd be actually looking at, possibly a higher tax payment.
Correct.
So this increase in the exemption could help offset that increase in value of their homes. I don't think it's going to be a huge impact to the taxpayers.
It's gonna be a balance.
But I know right now, it's $50,000.
Before we proceed, I did have some citizen input back via email, which I shared with the whole board, which I like just to read into record so people can know what two citizens were thinking concerning Articles 13 and 14. 13 had to do with investigating a community center for Dara over at Dara Pond. And 14, of course, is the elderly. Dear Chairman Weber, Town Administrator Brown, Vice Chairman Schaefer, Selectman Larry, Selectman Lemire, and Selectman Lynch. We write to you tonight to formally submit comments regarding Article 13 and to ask for clarification and a vote by the Board of Selectmen prior to the deliberative session regarding Article 14. Warrant Article 13 is an advisory article submitted by the Recreation Commission regarding a community center and is recommended unanimously by the Board of Selectmen. It would be helpful to understand the intent behind this article and how a yes or no vote by the taxpayers would be interpreted by the Board of Selectmen, Recreation Commission, and other town officials. We feel that there are many improvements and additions competing for resources and funding in the town, and this warrant article represents a dangerous approach, presenting one-off hypothetical projects when what is really needed is a cohesive, comprehensive, and fiscally responsible plan of action for development of Litchfield as a whole. Asking for input on one building at a time is incredibly short-sighted. Why does the Board of Selectmen support this article? We understand it is advisory and there is no tax impact initially, but people can be rightly concerned if a yes majority vote would be interpreted as a blessing for the taxpayers to prioritize a community center where there are many competing priorities and needs for expanded services to responsibly support our growing population and evolving needs. We humbly request the Board of Selectmen reconsider their support of this article, or at the very least elaborate in a public setting why they support this investigation and how it fits into the existing framework of the Capital Improvement Committee. We also wonder if it would be possible to have an open meeting inviting feedback from the public regarding what priorities they see for the town going forward. What we don't want to see is another capital improvement plan with costly recommendations that never get implemented. Please put the necessary time and energy into this new capital improvement plan, including opportunities for direct input regarding priorities of the townspeople, but then you have to act. We don't want resentment to build in the community where people feel the right priorities are not being highlighted and addressed. We would like to build consensus of residents through hearing their ideas and concerns. We feel that the unanimous vote in favor of the Article 13 could be interpreted as a unanimous support for a community center as a priority. Is that truly representative of the townspeople's priorities? It would speak volumes for the Board of Selectmen to reserve support for any particular priority and instead lean more heavily on the improvement plan and follow through on recommendations to evaluate the need for the community center independent of the need for the changes in other facilities is counterproductive. In addition, we feel that it is imperative that the town and school district plan together for Litchfield's future. We recognize the Board of Selectmen and school boards are two distinct entities, but there must come to a point when the fact that they are both get their funding based from the same taxpayers becomes paramount. We implore the Board of Selectmen and school board work together to determine priorities. There should be open public meetings with representatives of the Board of Selectmen, school board, budget committee, where priorities are discussed with full transparency and consideration of the needs of Litchfield as the entire community. We fear the Article 13 opens the door for spending and construction for a facility that is a want, not a need, and not a prioritized need at all. Article 14 is a petition warrant article, and as such, we understand that it was not written by the Board of Selectmen. However, we feel that there could be more clarity in the article's impact both financially and logistically. How is it a change from current tax exemptions and credits? Not everyone is familiar with the status quo as the Board of Selectmen might be, and we greatly appreciate phrasing that would utilize language such as increase or other words of magnitude. Is there a way to reword the article, not to change the intent, but rather to clear as what would be changed if I should pass? Our assumption based on the language is that it is an increase in tax exemptions for the elderly with certain income guidelines. We'd appreciate the Board of Selectmen supporting such measures as there needs to be an acknowledgement from the town elected officials that assistance is necessary for people struggling to afford payments while on fixed income. It is not just clear from the way Article 14 is written exactly what is changing, be it exemption amounts, age ranges, or income guidelines, or some combination thereof. From watching the YouTube video, as the written minutes are not available on the web, from the Board of Selectmen December 16th, 2019 meeting, it would appear that it is the exemption amounts that are changing, but it would be open and transparent what the current policy is and how it would affect by this article. Further, it would be a tremendous show of support for some of our most vulnerable residents for the Board of Selectmen to vote to recommend the article, or at least have an open and honest discussion of the merits or concerns raised by the article. At the December 16th meeting, the Board of Selectmen decided not to vote at all on this article, seemingly because the financial impact had not been calculated. Now that we are 2 weeks later, there should be more of an idea of the impact. We understand it is difficult to know exact figures, but an impression is possible in which With such guidance, it would be very much appreciated for the Board of Selectmen to vote and go on record with their support, or explain why they feel the current exemptions are sufficient. Thank you for your service to Litchfield and your attention to these points. Sincerely, Betty Vaughn, Stark Lane, and Nicole 40 Page Road.
Thank you.
So, I mean, a lot of these we've discussed tonight. You know, in Article 13, the way I see it is we had the Recreation Commission came to us and they wanted to know how to go about and get a petition. I mean, they're volunteers trying to do a job. So the way I see it, we took it upon ourselves to carry the petition for them so they didn't have to go out and get signatures.
And in addition, this is only to explore the will of the people. And, you know, we've been told that it's important for us to do that. And this is exactly what we're doing. I think we did the right thing on Article 13, and I would not change the recommendation. We were asked by the Rec Commission to do that. All they're doing is soliciting input. I think it's important we support them. They're volunteers. They've been doing a great job. And, you know, we can't predict people's thought processes. All we can do is solicit input, and this is important to do that.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, and I think it's even more profound for us to do it because we're starting up the capital improvement plan. If the voters come back and it's overwhelmingly yes, that they would like to investigate that would help set the priority of where it is in the capital improvement. If they come back and say absolutely not, well, now we know it's a very low priority when we're setting the capital improvement
But
plan.
we won't know unless we
Correct,
do.
unless we ask for that. And speaking to the whole community involvement plan, it is very much cross-functional. We have the school board, so it's going to be planned with the school board, the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, the Planning Board, and we have 2 citizens sitting on it. And once that group meets for the first time, we'll figure out if we're going to be public hearings. But no matter what we come out of that, there's going to be a public hearing I would believe, for the capital improvement plan. Then they're going to have to bring it to the Board of Selectmen, and we're going to have to have a plan.
Right.
So if anything, there's going to be plenty of time for people
There's
to
going to
give
be a lot
input,
of input.
input back and forth.
This bothers me. Steve, I agree. Brent, too.
It's a new year.
Okay, it's a new year. I know. I'm
New year,
I'm
new
still
year.
on meds. Okay?
Have some more. Jeez. Don't stop now.
I'm going to bring some light to the subject matter. It's what it is, okay? It's an article that the release put a group together to find out what's going on. There's nothing that holds us to anything, okay? Matter of fact, it's actually going to be, it may be the better, but this group may be separate from the capital improvement plan. Their group will help them feed the proper information. Because you've got one group that's going to do the whole big thing, but you may want subcommittees coming off that group, okay, the CIP, because there's a lot to do, especially when you get into schools and other departments and stuff like that. There's more to it. A CIP committee is very calculating, okay, and it needs input. One of the best things that I think is if you got the main committee and you get subcommittees that want to work on certain things that'll help lead to this. This is what it would be about. And that's all this is, okay?
Now, speaking of Article 14, I mean, we can't touch the verbiage of it. The time for people to have their input will be at deliberative.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, to that note, after what we heard tonight, I move that we recommend Article 14.
We have a motion by Mr. Lemire,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the only reason we didn't move on that in the last meeting is because we had no idea of the money.
Yeah, the
Okay,
impact,
and that would
yeah.
have been completely irresponsible of us to recommend it
Exactly.
without knowing. So that's why we did that.
Now we know.
Now we know, and yeah, we can move on recommending it.
Mhm.
And the other one, it's not, to me, it's no different than if the police came and said, we'd like to investigate the possibility of
Mhm.
looking at a new facility or the school, a new school, elementary school or something. Yeah, of course we would. We're in favor of putting everything in front of the voters and let them have a say. 'Cause
Exactly.
that's what
Totally
it's
agree.
about.
Yep.
But input from the residents is always a very good thing, so.
Certainly is.
That's why the
we have
CIP
many
committee is
hearings
gonna
and
bring in
chances.
that, it's gonna bring in, and I suggested on the CIP committee, as a board here, is that we let them get into some subcommittees that would help them feed the information, because that's a lot of work for a group like
And
that.
that
I think
structure
you may
will be
see them
defined.
Do that.
Yeah, and that structure will be defined at the
Yep.
first meeting. And on top of it, we have National Regional Planning Commission who's
Right.
going to help spearhead it
And
with
they
us.
have recommended,
They got some other things.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor of recommending Article 14? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 500.
Sorry, my hand didn't go up.
I saw your hand. Your fingers.
Yeah,
Right,
fingers.
with no other,
move to adjourn.
motion by Mr. Lemire,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Schaefer. All those in favor?
You got 3
Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 500. Thank you for watching and Happy New Year to everyone.
Stay tuned, there's more TV tonight.
2 more.